in today's video, we're going to be taking a slightly different take on maths. We're going to be talking about what the Romans have ever done for us. Everybody knows that famous Monty Python sketch, but what have they done for us in the field of maths? After all, EasyA is all about maths and helping you understand maths in the best way possible. And with us here today is the fabulous Anna Martin, former head of classics and amazing linguist. Apparently she speaks over 5 languages. That's right, Anna?
Yeah. It's difficult to count them because some of them are dead, some are alive. But yeah, let's say over 5. That makes it justice.
Great. Anna is an amazing position as a classicist to tell us more about what the Romans have ever done for us. So, I mean, would you like to just start off, Anna? Tell us, have they ever done anything for us in the field of maths? I mean, we always think of Newton, being sort of physics, maths, and these sort of great scientists. But, are there any famous Romans who did anything for us in the field of maths?
Well, I get that question very often. They always ask me, what have the Romans ever done for us? And the short answer is probably not very much. So the Romans were quite practical, and they were not particularly interested in advancing mathematical thinking. However, the imprint on modern mathematics is huge because of the role of Latin as a language of science well into the 18th century. Think, for example, you just mentioned Newton's work, his Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica. Well, that was written in Latin.
Wow, so that's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
so the Romans have generated us, I guess through Latin, a lot of the English scientists as well.
Mm-hmm. So the great mathematical breakthroughs from antiquity that come to mind are generally from Greek or Arabic speakers. However, those concepts have been transmitted to us and further explored in Latin. So regarding your question, a better question perhaps would be, what has Latin ever done for us?
That's an interesting perspective, actually. So, I mean, let's start with an example. I think maybe people are wondering, let's start with something that we often cover in school. And the most famous will probably be, much to everybody's, some people's disdain, Pythagoras' theorem. That's Greek, right? I'm pretty sure he was a Greek guy.
Yes, if he was a guy, he was Greek. The truth is, we know very little for sure about Pythagoras. He's more of a legendary character than a real historical figure. So in fact, if you ask, was there a man called Pythagoras who came up with this theorem? Many scholars would say, no, definitely we cannot say he even existed. Traditionally, the belief is that there was a man called Pythagoras who was born on the Greek island of Samos and then moved to southern Italy. He's supposed to have founded a sect based on his philosophy that gave a prominent role to numbers and music in explaining the world. And this may come as a bit of a surprise, but Pythagoreanism was a religious sect with very strict rules about behavior. They believed in the transmigration of the soul, so reincarnation, and seemed to have led very austere life. For example, they didn't eat any meat, fish, or beans even. So in order to help the soul escape the trap of the body. Yeah. So unfortunately, the followers were sworn to secrecy, and hence our difficulties finding out exactly what was going on there. But it's not your typical mathematical story that you would expect.
Yeah, I didn't really have any idea about that because you often, it's called Pythagoras' theorem. If we're taught that, Pythagoras' theorem is done by Pythagoras, and you're telling me that somebody like Pythagoras, or called Pythagoras, maybe never even existed, who actually came up with it then?
Yeah, when you think about it, it is quite unfair that all students have heard about Pythagoras, but few have heard about Euclid at all. And this would not have come as so much as a surprise to students, say, 100 years ago. But Euclid, who lived in 300 BC, was the first to write a mathematical textbook as such. And he is indeed the first written record we have of Pythagoras' theorem. His work was used as a textbook well into the 20th century. So we're not very familiar with it now directly, but it would have been 100 years ago. And it is probably the most successful textbook of all times.
Wow. That's pretty crazy. The most successful textbook, we often think, about AQA, Edexcel, those are classical.
Yeah.
Those are the most successful textbooks, but actually back in the day, they were all in Latin. But then,
Yes, well, in Greek, then translated into Latin, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, sticking on the topic of, let's say triangles and maths, Pythagoras and Euclid are Greek. If we're talking about the longest side of a triangle, the hypotenuse, right? Is that also Greek? That is, right?
Yes, the origin of the term is in the Greek language. It comes from the verb hypoteino, which means to stretch. So hypotenusa is the feminine participle, and it means stretching, is the one that stretches. Yeah. So if you think about it, it's not really an abstract concept. The Greeks were mainly interested in geometry, which is literally measuring the earth, measuring the world that we have around us, and they use lengths in order to count. So what they would do when they were doing their calculations is they would use poles or stakes stuck in the ground and then stretch ropes to work out the measurements. So it is that action of stretching the rope we are referring to when we talk about the hypotenuse.
Oh, wow.
But
that's very interesting to know, and it helps students to remember it.
Yes, but again, yes, this is a Greek concept, but the word itself, as we know it, only enters English in the 16th century from the late Latin adaptation hypotenusa. So it enters English through all these textbooks written in Latin in the 16th, 17th century.
Okay, that explains it then. I mean, I've got to come up with another one. Maybe, what have the Romans done for us? Let's find another thing, another concept in Latin. How about pi? Is that at least Latin? It's written in Latin script, but does that mean it's sort of Latin but not quite Latin?
No, it really is, again, not Latin. It's P, and it's a Greek letter. And here again, yes and no. The term was coined in the 17th and 18th century in books that were written in Latin. But actually, it is just taken from the first letter of the Greek word for periphery, which is periferia. Yeah. So again, we have a Greek word, a Greek letter, P, coming to us through texts written in Latin by people who really were not Romans.
Okay, but you've talked about the letter pi. How about the concept, right? We're talking about maths here. So what about, is the concept of pi Roman?
I don't think so, no, because the ratio of pi has been known for such a long time that it is impossible to find an inventor as such. We can't say, oh, this is where it was mentioned this is where it was used for the first time. What we do know is that the first calculations were already well known before the Romans. So there are approximations to pi, both in the Bible and in Egyptian texts. So the only thing is those calculations must have been rather rudimentary and the product of actual measurements. It is not really until Archimedes, a Greek, that we have indications of a more abstract approach leading to a theoretical calculation. So, in fact, Archimedes, a Greek, was the first person we know to have proved the ratio to be a mathematical constant. Interestingly, ironically, it seems that Archimedes was killed by Roman soldiers. They probably were not aware of his contribution to mathematics. So, yeah, I guess that does say a lot about the Romans' attitude to the discipline.
Wow, yeah, he was actually killed by the Romans. Okay, so they definitely didn't come up with it then.
No. The tradition is that when they invaded where he was living, they killed him. It's difficult to know exactly what happened there, but yeah, this is what has been.
Okay, right. So all of the ones that I proposed sort of are not really Latin. I mean, do you want to explain to anybody wondering, what the Romans have done for us, what they have given to us via their tradition and via Latin?
Yes, well, actually, Latin has given us plenty of the vocabulary that we use to talk about mathematics. So think about an example. For example, calculus. The plural of calculus is calculi. And those would be pebbles that were moved around a smooth board that was used to count in Roman times. And that's why nowadays we still call it calculus, because you count with these little pebbles. If you think about its cognates, cousins in linguistic terms, so to speak, You may have heard of somebody having a stone in the kidney, a calculus in the kidney, or going to the dentist. If you're unlucky, you may be told you have calculus on your teeth. That's again the same idea. Yes, it's the same root of the word. But also, for example, notice we use in English numbers that are mostly of Germanic origin. Yeah, like 4, 5, 6, etc. But the words we use to talk about those numbers are actually of Latin origin. So, for example, you refer to tens as decimals, which comes from Latin decem. Or, I don't know, another example, when you talk about an equation, that derives from the Latin aequatio, aequationes, which literally means leavening up or making equal. And it is already in this sense that Cicero used it somewhat mathematically to refer to the redistribution of wealth in his texts, for example.
Just sort of thinking about that more abstractly, I mean, do you think that then the Romans did more for us in terms of actually applying the maths rather than what the Greeks did in terms of abstract thinking? It sounds very much like the Romans are the ones who built the roads, the sewers, the aqueducts, and the Greeks are the ones who did the thinking about maths. But the Romans sort of took it and actually maybe did some engineering. They're more engineers rather than pure mathematicians.
Yes, I think you're spot on there. Certainly. However, the development of mathematics as a discipline is so intrinsically linked to the language of the Romans, Latin, that it is not possible really to think about the history of maths without looking at the history of the main language of the Romans, that is Latin.
Wow, yeah, that's really fascinating. We've always thought that the Romans have done so much for us. I think especially maybe in school, we focus a lot on the Romans and what they've done for us. And the only way we really find out about the Greeks is, well, maybe through watching 300 or some other movies about the Spartans. The other way is through learning about Pythagoras' theorem. But you've told us that actually, Pythagoras may not even have existed. And it's Euclid who may have been the more important person to think about. Yeah, I mean, really fascinating food for thought. And thank you very much for coming on, Anna, to tell us more.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Great. Yeah, and so for everybody watching, if there's anything, if you have any other questions for Anna or for me, do leave them in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe to watch more videos, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Walete.